well, good evening. We're glad to have you here in the boardroom with us and in our overflow and joining us virtually. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 1.3 is approval of the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve as well as a second. Any discussion?
Madam President, I'm going to make a request to make a move on the agenda to move the superintendent's report up to before the item, as we have a presentation this evening.
I will make a motion to move that superintendent's report up on the agenda.
Second. I think that amendment.
We have to, that would be an amendment.
Oh, amendment, sorry.
Yes. To approve the agenda, but move the superintendent's report up. Is that?
I'm good with the amendment.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Or any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Just so everyone knows, we're waiting for ayes coming from board members who aren't in the room with us, so just be patient with us. All right, thank you. That amendment carries. All in favor of, let's see, do we need to vote on the full motion? That was just the amendment. We'll vote on the motion to approve the agenda with the superintendent's report moved up. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay?
They can't hear online, Teresa.
Okay, they can't hear online. Okay. I am a long way from all of you. I'm going to do this so you can hear me because it's important that everyone is able to hear. Thank you, Mrs. Eisler. All right. We have all the ayes. Any opposed? Chair votes aye, and that is approved. We will move that up to after the public comment, the first public comment. So item 1.4 is input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any, and discussion of those comments. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. We do reserve the right to limit the time of comments in interest of all of us getting home and going to bed at some time tonight. I have several requests for public comment, and we will start with those.
And Teresa, is there any way that we can advise commenters? This is not a question the board session. In fact, we're here to get answers to questions as well.
Certainly.
That, if they do have questions, they may be emailed to Dr. Robinson.
Certainly, we can do that.
Okay.
If the board is okay with that. I'm not going to take an official vote. I'm just going to take are you okay with questions?
And we're not doing a replay of the last two meetings at this meeting either, please?
All right, I understand.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay. All right, we have, the first request is from Travis Carr.
Good evening. I typed it up so I make sure I know what I'm saying. My name is Travis Carr, and I'm a vice principal from Spring Creek Middle School. I stand before you this evening to voice my concern over opening schools using the hybrid model. I do not want to take away anything from the many hours that were put into drafting and creating the three models, and I specifically want to thank the reopening committee, the board, Dr. Robinson, and all the folks at Central Office for the hard work they've put into this ever-changing world we now live in. Ever-changing is the key. We now see that Elko is in the red zone, which puts us at an active or imminent outbreak threat level. Out of 17 Nevada counties, we are only behind Clark County in infection rates per 100,000 people. We also have the second highest infection rate out of those 17 counties. This data is alarming in of itself, but knowing that Elko County's numbers are this high and we haven't even opened our school doors yet is even more alarming. With this information in hand, it seems our only logical choice is to start the year with our distance learning model. I wear many hats when I walk into Spring Creek Middle School. I'm a father, a husband, an administrator, and no matter what hat I am wearing, I am first and foremost concerned about the health and safety of everyone. From my own family to the students and staff that walk through the door, it is my responsibility to ensure that they have a safe, healthy environment. Opening with the hybrid model does not ensure this safe, healthy environment. I, like many others, want nothing more than everything to go back to normal, or as normal as we can get during a pandemic. But in our current situation, any in-person any in-person learning feels extremely unsafe. I don't envy the position you are in as a board. No matter what decision is made, people will be angry. However, I do feel that as a member of the community, I would be doing a disservice to myself, my own family, as well as my school family if I didn't speak up and voice these concerns. Thank you for listening, and thank you for everything you all do.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Next, we have Kathy Durham.
Hi, I'm Kathy Durham. I'm from West Wendover. I've taught at the high school now. This will be my 21st year teaching American government and U.S. history. I also come to you as a member of our city council. And I wished I would have typed mine up, but I didn't make the decision to come over until about 3:30 this afternoon. But I would like to echo the concerns of the member who just spoke and say that I have some very real concerns about opening up with a hybrid model. I appreciate everything that you guys did in terms of putting together a plan, which is an impossible plan because the factors and the variables are changing every day, if not hourly. This last week I have spent in my room trying to get things set up so that I can get the 15 kids in my room at 6 feet apart, and I can only get 14 unless I take the teacher station out. But let me tell you why I don't think we should open our schools. Number one, first and foremost, is the virus. If you listen to the doctors and the scientists and the people in the health organizations, a classroom is a petri dish. Okay? It is a confined area with not great ventilation where you have a cluster of people all put together for an amount of time. And in my case, I will see over 120 students a day cycling through my room. Okay? That is a concern. But let's say we don't all believe in the virus, so we don't get to count that one. So we're going to get rid of science, and we're going to go to some other factors. The number one factor after that is the law. The law says that whether you believe in the virus or not, you will wear a mask, you will keep yourself 6 feet away from each other, and you will have good ventilation. I've already mentioned my ventilation, so let's talk about the problems of mask. We're going to keep the kids on it, but as a teacher who now has 14 guests in my room, we are not part of the limited liability clause. So now you're going to open yourself up for a lawsuit. And lawsuits are not meant to be won or lost. Lawsuits are meant to be settled, which means we're going to pay. Now in my classroom, I have it so I have every desk 6 feet away. I am 6 feet away from my students, up until Johnny raises his hand and he needs help. I have to stay 6 feet away from Johnny. Now I can walk over to Johnny and be 6 feet from him, but now I am right next to student B. Okay? So now when I dismiss my students, how am I going to dismiss my students and keep them all 6 feet away? How are we going to, every single thing that we are asked to do, we're going to have to write and request a variance for. And if we don't request it and it doesn't happen, the district is now setting themselves up for a lawsuit. I understand that there are no simple answers. This is a almost unprecedented situation. We can look back to 1918 and see what they did. They shut down the schools, they shut down the churches, and they shut down the schools. Teachers didn't do online learning because they didn't have computers. As a matter of fact, what teachers did, they went back to school and worked as nurses. That's what we did in 1918. I think we need to go online. I want to get back into the classroom. I know that we want to get our kids back in. But your job, I understand your job is to represent your constituents, but really your job is to uphold the oath to the Constitution that you took. The government was put in place to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So our number one job is to protect the lives of our teachers and our students that walk through that door. We are to provide for them the opportunity to get their diplomas and to learn. We are not setting students up for best practices. All of the turn and talk, all of the think, pair, shares, all of the best practices that I have attended CFG after CFG after CFG to learn how to be an effective teacher, I gotta throw that out the window. Because I gotta stand in one spot to not break the law on what is the way we're supposed to teach our kids. I understand people want kids back in school for their socialization and for their mental health. Your children are not returning back to school as normal. Your children are now returning back to a school that if you think you had rules before, we've got even more rules. Please don't come up and hug me. Don't hug your friends. You two need to get 6 feet apart. Why are you holding hands? You guys can't have lockers. You need to carry your backpacks with you from class to class. And we will have to issue a book this time, and you will have to carry it around because we can't be sharing things. Okay? We are going to be adding more stress into the lives of our students than they've ever had before. And you're going to have staff members who are stressed out now, an extra added thing. Teachers are not, from my standpoint that I understand, kids are being given the choice as to whether or not they attend school or not attend school. Teachers aren't. My husband is 72 years old. He just got a heart monitor placed on him. I have to live in my basement now if I go back to school. I've worked with several staff members who have those immunocompromised situations. It's not just about the kids, it's about all of us. I just think that there are too many situations that open ourselves up for a worse problem, a bigger problem than we already have. Last but not least, schools are always getting underfunded. Schools, that's not your fault. You get the budget that you get. But schools have never been fully funded and structured to be the learning environment that we need their schools to be. We have had a complete reset with our schools, our economy, our health crisis, our political unrest. Everything has just, boom, blown up. We need to be rethinking and restructuring our schools. But everybody is saying, no, just open them up, and not giving us the time to really rethink how do we want to do this so that we do it right. Are we just going to open up our doors for the sake of opening up our doors because it will make people happy and not think about the consequences of the environment that we are going to put our kids in? Shouldn't we take this time when we are shut down to really think about what do we want schools to look like? What do we want to see? What do we want to hear? What do we want to do when we open those doors so that our kids get the best education? Because I think that is why we're sending our kids to school. We're not sending them there to hang out with their friends. That's the fringe benefit. We're sending our kids to get an education in an economy that is becoming increasingly competitive on the world scale. Don't just open the doors and give everybody a pass and just say, oh, well, let's just do it willy-nilly. Let's get it right this time. Please, don't open those doors until we're ready, until the lives are protected, the liberty to learn and get the right education so that our kids can go out and pursue their passions and become productive members of society that are informed and involved so that we have crises like this, we can make the right decisions and not the ones that just makes us happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Durham. Thank you for driving from Wendover to share your comments with us. We appreciate that. Next is Tim Wickersham.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Tim Wickersham. I'm the principal at Elko High School. We have approximately 1,300 students in our school. And I'm not here to make an impassioned plea for one reopening plan over another. I did serve on the committee. I was able to look at all three models as we went through that process. And I'm not here to make a political statement. This issue has become politicized to the point where I don't even understand it anymore a lot of times. And thank God You're politicians and I'm not. I'm an educator. I'm a public servant and I work for you. You hired me to administer a large high school, the largest high school that we have. So I'm not here to make a plea for or against any of these plans. But it is my duty, I think, to inform you, if you haven't heard it yet, from somebody who knows and someone who has studied it for months tirelessly with my colleagues, that the blended learning model that we are currently on course to implement is something that cannot be done, given the restrictions and the protocols that we've been given to work with. That's just a fact. You can take that for whatever it's worth, but it cannot be done. We have facilities that are what they are. I can't increase my rooms by 20% size. We have new rooms under construction, but I can't make them be built by next week or the week after. I don't have sufficient staffing to do what we're being asked to do under the blended learning model. We don't have sufficient resources, sufficient supervision to make those things happen. Is it doable? In theory, yes, if we had those things in place, but we don't. We've set up our rooms. I can get 15 kids 6 feet away from each other in many of our classrooms, not all, but many of them. But 3 of those desks are against the wall, they can't see the smartboard. And then if you put a teacher in that room, you've blown it all up because that 6-foot space is gone. Most of my rooms, most of the buildings on my campus were built before I was born. And they weren't built for this. They have built-in cabinets, built-in bookshelves that rob us of the square footage that would be required to make that happen. I'm concerned about the liability just because we can't do it. The rooms aren't big enough, folks. They're just not. And we have too many students. Right now with our schedule and the stage that it's at, and it won't improve much, if any, I have over 30 sections of core classes that have 30 students or more. Josh Farmer, who has done, I think, an outstanding job with Infinite Campus, getting those cohorts sliced into A's and B's. It turned out far better than I thought it would, but we still have many dozens of sections that split up at 18 and 12, or at 20 and 10. I can't put those kids in the hall. And I know that the solution would seem to be, well, just change their cohort, make the A's and the B's where you need to. But that can't be done easily either. Because every time we take a kid and try to switch them from A to B, we have to look at their other 6 classes to make sure that we're not throwing the balance off there. And then we have to check with the schools of all their siblings to make sure that we're not fouling that up. The number of variables and the number of permutations make balancing our schedule so that we can follow these protocols untenable. We can't do it. And I will do what you tell me to do, but I'm telling you, I'm really uncomfortable with the idea that the district or me personally would bear any liability for not following those protocols when I know darn good and well right now, I knew a month ago, we cannot do it. So you can take that for what it's worth. I will implement what we are told to implement. I will ignore the politics to the best of my ability because that's my privilege. As I said, I'm not a politician. I will leave that to you all, gratefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wickersham. We appreciate your time on that committee, so we know you are very involved in what happened. Thank you.
Do we want to wait with questions for particular schools? Because I have a lot for Elko High School. Or is this the appropriate time? We're just going to wait.
All right, well, I think we'll have, looks like it'll be Spring Creek High School next, so go ahead, let's ask questions of Mr. Wickersham, if you'd like, Mr. Seisler.
Mr. Wickersham, are there any programs at your school are there any programs at your school that could go hybrid? Like larger programs or smaller programs that may not have as many students?
We do have individual disciplines where we are staffed well enough to make that happen. Yes.
So hypothetically, if we did move to an online environment, could other programs, and in particular, I'm thinking, and once again, I'm just reminding people, I do work for GBC, the HVAC program that GBC has a partnership with Elko County School District, could that one still be run
Yes.
live and in person, or even a hybrid?
The construction program could run, the HVAC program could not currently, the way it's scheduled.
Okay. Too many numbers?
Yeah,
Or
we've got,
space?
it's numbers
Okay,
in that case, yeah. We do have space for that.
okay.
And when I said that I have a great number of sections that are 30 or above, I was just referring to the cores. I'm not even talking about PE,
Right.
which, you know, we lost a teacher to attrition, and those numbers are very high. I'm not talking about vocal music, which by its nature is not only risky, but there are 70 kids in that class. Band with 80? I have no idea how to even approach that. And I'm gonna tell you too, it's not for lack of trying, folks. It's not because we lack competence. I have really good people that have been working on this for a long time. It's not because of laziness. I've got people at the school working right now that have been there since 7 this morning, working on this. They've worked weekends, they've worked evenings.
Can you speak to, you just jogged my memory on the other one I had, was the logistics as far as passing period with students in the hallways. Was there going to be some sort of passing pattern or staggered passing period that students would be doing?
Staggering the times becomes very difficult to stay within a contract day for our employees. The biggest problem that we have is we've got 6 foot minimum distance between people. We've got 8.5 foot halls. We have designated exits and entrances. We have designated stairwells up and down. But even then, even if we could enforce those things, I've got, if we go blended, I've got 650, 700 people, kids, and 100 employees at lunch, and I guarantee you, because I know them, I've worked with them all my life, at lunch, they're gonna take off their masks and they're gonna go in groups of 30, 40, and 50 to McDonald's, Burger King, and Maverick. And when the attorneys get a hold of an outbreak, it's not gonna matter where they caught it. They were at school. We'll never be able to differentiate between where they caught it.
Questions, Mr. Zeisler?
Thank you. I just don't want to monopolize people's time here. I'm sure some things will come up with the superintendent's presentation. Thank you, Mr. Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Next, we have Sean Taylor.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Sean Taylor, I'm the principal at Spring Creek High School. I'm also here on behalf of our Administrators Association, which I am now currently the president of. This letter is an expression of our concern, along with many other administrators, some you'll hear from this evening, some you've already heard from, with the reopening plans for Elko County School District. We believe the plan lacks viability by producing 2 or 3 days per week of face-to-face contact with students, or at best, 5 days of in-person instruction over a 2-week period, which ultimately reduces our yearly contact time with students. Distance learning would provide consistency, constant contact with all students, and allow for the pandemic plaguing our community an opportunity to level out before in-person instruction proceeds. The COVID-19 virus presents a direct threat to the health and well-being of the students, staff, and all stakeholders of Elko County School District. Despite the current red zone label for Elko County, our district has elected to return to impartial in-person instruction, disregarding recommendations from the CDC to wait for in-person instruction until the community transmission level is low. While we understand the tremendous undertaking at hand, we believe the decision to bring students and staff back to schools is rushed and does not realize the full extent of the demands of running and operating a school under these conditions. Schools are facing physical limitations, staff reductions, unclear guidance, and the most recent development of being charged with running our schools with no guarantee of liability protection other than good faith. Educators are asked time and time again to do more with less. This current task of being asked of educators is too much and brings significantly more risk than reward. It compromises our ultimate goal of safely returning to full in-person instruction. Our community must do everything we can to help mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Bringing students, staff, and stakeholders into buildings, which has proven to be a disastrous order in other school districts across the nation and perpetuates the spread of COVID-19, does not help us achieve our goal of returning to in-person instruction sooner rather than later. We are leaders in our community and should be assisting with the mitigation of the spread of COVID-19. I greatly appreciate the time our reopening committee, board, central office administrators, community have dedicated to reopening. However, I feel it is in the best interest we reconsider our plan for reopening in the hybrid model. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, Mr. Taylor,
Yeah.
does your school pose any unique situations unlike Elko or same?
Very similar.
Yeah.
Mr. Wickersham, I believe, was at 30 sections. We're at 23 sections with 32 to 40 students. PE's a disaster. Currently, we can effectively feed 100 kids at a time, where we need to feed 225 kids at a time. That's fine for the first 2 months of school. When winter hits, we don't know what to do. We don't have the space. I don't have the staff to supervise. I don't have the staff to, unless they would voluntarily take a lunch to have kids in their classroom. So many what ifs. I mean, I can't echo enough the same consistent troubles that we run into time and time again. I have a whiteboard in my office that is filled of questions, stuff we've hashed over and over again, and I have less checks than anything. So I think we're all facing similar problems that we just can't come up with an answer to.
Any other questions, Mr. Taylor? All right, thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Anderson if he would like to talk. He is the Wells Combined Principal, and I see he's in our audience.
Yeah, sure. I didn't fill out anything for public comment, but I'm happy to share my sentiments as well. Thank you for having us here this evening. As she said, I'm Mr. Anderson, CJ, Principal of Wells Combined Schools. I also would like to echo the sentiments of basically everyone who's spoken this evening. I, like Mr. Wickersham, do not like to dabble or even discuss politics for the most part. What I say has nothing to do with any of that. My sentiment is that we all, as administrators, when we were given the proposal for the hybrid model, that every single one of us were willing to consider what we had to do. Okay, we looked at all of the restrictions. We looked at what was asked of us. We were considering all the various factors, communicating with Dr. Robinson, Mr. McEnany, Mr. Walls, Mr. Smith, just everybody that we could, tirelessly, right? We looked at all those things, and the best way I just can wrap my head around it is once we got down that rabbit hole, we started to realize exactly what was ahead of us, and that it was unattainable. That is my belief, my opinion. I realize I put myself at a little bit of risk by saying that because it makes it sound like perhaps I'm not able to do the job, but I don't think that's the case. I think I'm very competent. I think I'm an intelligent individual, and I am surrounded by other people that are just as capable or more, and just as intelligent or more so. And we are stumped. Again, just like Mr. Wickersham, I am willing to do everything I'm asked to do. I'm willing to do that. I care about our kids. I love our kids. I love our community. I love education, but I also love making sure people are safe and healthy and able to go on to pursue those things they want to do in the future. And I feel like the things we do, if we open up in the hybrid model, will compromise that, not just for the kids, but for their families, for their relatives, for the people we interact with everywhere we go. I mean, I've been an ultra quarantiner with my family at home this summer, and that's not to toot our horn, but this is because I believe that's what we're supposed to do. And when I go to work, I feel like I need to make sure everyone is safe, just like I try to keep my family safe, just like I've tried to keep my neighbors safe. I wouldn't let my kids play out with the neighbor kids half the summer. And that's just my responsibility as an individual, as a father, as a husband, and as a principal and an educator. I don't, in case this was gonna be a question for me, in regards to different circumstances at Wells, I don't feel like I have as many of the same pressing issues as some of the larger schools. I have a smaller population with 2 different buildings. Space isn't necessarily an issue for me. In theory, space is not an issue. But as you start to think about the little details of moving through the hallways, of recess for our little kids, I mean, come on. I would be lying if I told any person, I'm gonna bring your kids to school, I'm gonna keep them all 3 or 6 feet away from everybody at all times, and I can guarantee that we're gonna keep them away from the spread of COVID. Like, I can't do that, and I can't say that, and I'm not willing to even pretend like I'm able to do that. I care very much about them, and I wanna make sure I'm being honest about what we're able to accomplish. We do have other problems, though, that some of the other schools have, and our problems are more along the lines of every little thing you do is not only interconnected in our high school, but everything you do at the high school also affects the middle school, also affects the elementary. We share teachers from campus to campus. Our cafeteria is shared between the 2 buildings. Absolutely everything. You name an element of our school system in Wells, and you change one thing at one place, it affects everything at the other, another thing at another place. So keeping that in mind, I feel like we've done a pretty good job coming up with what we're able to come up with, and even then, I don't feel like it's safe, I don't feel like it's effective, and I definitely think it would be a disservice to our kids, our community, and I probably haven't talked enough about my staff members who I care very much about, and it would definitely be a disservice to them. So I guess that's all I wanted to share. Do you have any other questions for me?
Questions from the board? Thank you for just coming up on the spot. I know we have other administrators in the room, we have parents. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a public comment? Please, Mr. Trevor.
All right. Good evening. I'm Ty DeBoer. Been a school teacher here for past 17 years. For the past 9 years now, I've been up in the trailers up in Flagview. I'll write this down so you don't mind. So I spent the last week arranging my classroom to meet all state mandates and CDC guidelines. As Dr. Robinson stated, the schools will be doing the last school board meeting, as we will be following those strict guidelines. I contacted the school board about class sizes, setups, liability concerns with these arrangements of classrooms, and encourage all of you to come visit my room and a few others. Several board members did, and I just want to say thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. All the board members here were emailed pictures with measurements to these classrooms as well. And to meet the state requirements and CDC guidelines of our classrooms, especially in the modular trailers where we're at, we can reasonably accommodate 11 to 12 elementary students at a maximum within the modular trailers. I have currently right now on my roster 25 students, and that leaves me 12 kids one day and 13 the other. My fear is we're going to be doing in our classrooms exactly what happened with this room. How many people did we turn away because the seating was so few? Which kids are we going to turn away? That's my fear. Who do I have to say, there's no space for you in this classroom because we cannot meet the guidelines? I'm concerned about what teachers could be held liable for and whether or not we can actually meet all the mandates and guidelines adequately to reopen the schools. Please don't get this as a push for we want distance learning. We all want to be within the classroom. We want to be teaching our kids. I mean, I don't think there's a teacher out there that thinks distance learning is an answer to the end-all be-all, but we want to have our kids in the school. But right now, we cannot do that according to the guidelines. It's a big concern of ours as educators about the safety and the liability risks that are going to be on us as well. I don't know if we had the images to share or not of those of the classrooms. If we did, I'd like to show those to you, but if not, check your emails.
As I know, each board member received an email and it is the classrooms mapped out. I will just say I went and looked at the classrooms. I'm a visual learner, so the tape on the floor and the desks and the yardsticks, were really helpful. And it's, a lot of things look good on paper, but when you put them into practice in the classroom, not just in this case, but in all cases,
Right.
It doesn't always work out. So, it was, I appreciated the opportunity to go and see that in a classroom and know that our limits are what they are with the guidance we have, with the directives we've received, and we can't turn kids away.
My school services all the 5th grade here in Elko, and we're all in the modular trailers. So the hybrid model does not, we can't service all the kids. There's just no space or room for them. So I hope you take that into consideration. So, thank you.
And those modules are significantly smaller than the classrooms, right?
Correct. And they also showed us a classroom in the building, and there's only room for just a couple more students, even in those classrooms. So I understand the logistics are pretty challenging. Is there anyone else that wishes to make a comment? Please come forward.
Ty, can we,
Oh, sorry.
can we not read yours, or do you want us to still read yours?
No, I'm skipping yours. You said your thing, so I'm just telling you. You already had your piece.
Sorry, Sarah.
No, you're fine. I'm Sarah Desart. I work at Adobe Middle School. I also know technology pretty well. My concern with the hybrid model is the demands on the teacher to be in the class, supervising, and also trying to provide the best online instruction for those students at home. It can be a lot of work to develop online stuff. And asking a teacher to spend all day in the classroom with students, and then a 10-minute video for me would take an hour or two. I've talked to other people that would take longer. The PDP, or NMI PDP, has a wonderful idea. Playlists, those kind of things are wonderful, but they do take time. And for me, they take time, and for someone that doesn't know technology as well, would take a large amount of time that in a hybrid model I don't know if we have. And plus to give the feedback to the kids that are at home that they need, and our kids in class. So I'm just looking at from a technology standpoint, you need time to develop those. And in a hybrid model, I don't know. Thank you.
Sarah, would each teacher though have to build content, or could it be done grade level wise, or even within disciplines?
In disciplines in the middle school, but at my school, there's only 2 of us teaching 7th grade. We could combine with Spring Creek and other schools that teach 7th grade, but it's still who has that time to build that. And you can get it built, but how good is it? What best practices are you involving in it? And those are what takes time to put into the videos. I mean, you can sit there and videotape a lecture, but that's not going to be worthwhile. It's adding other things into that. So.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any other
Teresa, I had a question.
Yes, Candace, go ahead.
So, I mean, I understand what you're saying about the technology being an issue for some of us. If we go to an online only situation, how are we going to deal with that issue when everything is done online?
We're not trying to balance both. We're just focused strictly on our online learning, and we're not trying to balance the two. It's hard to do it both ways, is what I feel.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Candace, were you able to hear that?
Yes,
Okay.
I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, we have several comments that are, came in advance, and I will read some of those. We will not go through all of them. We will move on shortly to the superintendent's report. This one is from Josh and Allison Byers. If better outcomes and involvement compared to the end of last school year are serious concerns and goals, how does the district intend to keep out of crisis mode? How does the district intend to hold teachers and students accountable to be engaging with each other if we are distance learning? And I know that question will be answered shortly, correct? In the presentation. All right, this is from Kelsey McCullough. Hello, I am unable to attend the meeting today as I'm out of town. I have a few questions I would greatly appreciate hearing an answer to. As far as IEPs will be handled, I understand that I stands for individual, but what, sorry, my screen is moving and I don't want to, will be done to ensure that those therapies and needs are being met? 2, in the event of a school shutdown, how will those IEP needs be met? And how will therapists and teachers be held responsible and accountable? 3, when will IEP students in the pre-K program be contacted about their status? 4, how will pre-K at Liberty Peak look? Will they be going an A-B schedule or will it be more normal? I realize the majority of my questions are directed to Mr. Smith and I want to welcome him again. I look forward to working with you as we tackle this roller coaster of a year. This one is from Taylor Holland. My question is in regards to school exposure and closure. In the event that a student is exposed due to a positive case in their class, will the student's entire family have to stay home in quarantine? All right, and Sharon Robinson, what are they going to do with school this year? That's a good question, Sharon, and we all want the answer. Absolutely, we are getting to the wire to school starts and don't even have a schedule or even what school will look like. Is it going to be one room teaching for middle school or switching classrooms? Whole days, rules on kids with fevers, rules on sick days. These all have question marks, just so you know. If kids get to school and have a fever, do we have to come to pick them up? What for parents who don't have transportation? Is it the same as other years where we miss 10 days and you turn us in? All right, so those are several questions that we'll have some answers to, and some have been answered in the past. I believe unless the board wishes to continue with public comment, we should move on to the superintendent's report.
Grace, so we got some comments that are in this room.
Okay, well, we can go ahead and take comments from the overflow. Thank you.
So, my name is Lisa Jackson. I'm a parent. I understand you guys are put in a rock and a hard place. I get it. However, I think that the hybrid model's got a lot of problems. And I think that there's a lot of parents that are wanting to do all online and parents that are wanting to send their kids back to school. The liability thing, have them sign a waiver. I'm sorry, but sending our kids to school is no more dangerous for you or your family members than you going to the grocery store. I have family members that are at risk. I'm an essential employee who goes to work every day. I get my temperature tested. I have to answer a survey. If I have a temperature, I go home for 2 weeks. But here's my thing. I have 2 children with IEPs. And when I call and I ask, what's your guys' plan for our IEP students so they don't fall through the cracks? And I get, we don't know yet. We haven't figured that out. You've had since April to figure it out. My children are not going to fall through the cracks when I work with my teachers and I teach my children at home. And then it's, we don't know how to help your student because of the hybrid model. As it is, I had to fight for my kids' IEPs to be followed at Spring Creek High School and at Spring Creek Middle School because the teachers don't have time. And now you're taking more of their time to do online classes and build programs that a lot of these teachers don't know how to do. And what are you going to do when you have a child that needs help? Sorry, I can't help you because of a virus that has a 98% survival rate. It's no more deadly than the flu. More people died from the swine flu than this. You guys don't shut the schools down for flu season. You don't shut the schools down and clean everything up for pink eye or head lice. You don't even tell anybody. But we're supposed to do this. We have frontier internet. On a good day, you can't even watch a Netflix show, but you expect thousands of students to be able to get online at the same time and do schoolwork? Are you crazy? How many of you guys have had problems with frontier? Everybody? Do you have frontier?
No.
Do you? Do you have a good time with it?
No.
Do you?
I don't have it, but I don't have good internet either.
We have thousands of people here that are going to try to get their kids on a computer to do schoolwork, and you've got kids who have reading comprehension problems or math problems or have disabilities, and you expect them to learn where they don't have a teacher that can tell them what to do. We did distance learning. My kids struggled hard. And then when my son is reading at a 4th grade level or less in high school because his IEP is not being followed in normal school, and now you expect his IEP to be followed in hybrid model? Have us parents that want our kids to go to school and get a good education, be back in the classroom, I will sign a waiver all day long, every day. Temperature test my child to go to that school. And if he's sick, send him home. I'll come get him. But I'm that parent that doesn't send my kid to school when they're sick. Wearing a mask is a mandate, not a law. Laws have to be voted in. I don't care if my kid has to wear a mask. And I don't care that he talks to his girlfriend in the hallway, but he needs his teacher. My kids don't want to do hybrid learning. They want to go back to school because they miss you guys. But my kids are going to struggle and my kids are going to fail because I'm not a teacher, but I work on their reading. I work on their math. And then when my kid has a special class in high school and she's not doing that because it takes too much time, now what? What's up for my children? Are my children not important? Your teachers want to be in their classrooms. Sign waivers and still get away with the 6-foot rule, because 6-foot rules, it could have stopped because kids touch everything. They touch their face, they touch their hair, they touch the shopping cart. They're going to touch their lockers that some girl put her butt up against because she was talking to her friend 6 foot apart. Are you going to have the janitors go through and spray your lockers down and all your desks in between classes? No. You're not. These kids need to get the virus so they can freaking get better from it. How many of you have gone to the doctor and they say, oh, it's just a virus, there's nothing we can do, let it run its course? You're weakening their immune systems. You're weakening their education. Hybrid learning is the best thing you guys got, and I get that, and I know you guys are stuck. But telling everybody they have to go to online schooling doesn't work. We saw that with distance learning.
Thank you. And I would encourage you to get a hold of Mr. Smith to talk about the IEPs, because he would be glad to answer a lot of your questions. And I will just remind you, because this question has come up a lot, distance learning will not look like the emergency learning we did in the spring. I have teachers in the room shaking their heads saying, yeah, we're ready to do this. We're going to have training. Distance learning is going to look like a whole different thing than what you saw in the spring. All right, thank you for your comments. Any other comments in there, Mr.
So we have one
Aaron?
more from Ms. Canepa.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sheila Canifa. I'm a counselor at Elko High School. I've been counseling for 15 years, and I don't want to repeat what Mr. Wickersham has said, but I'm here to offer kind of a perspective from the counseling department at Elko High School. So far this year, we've enrolled 20 new students. We have about 29 pending to still enroll, with probably another 20 after that, which is kind of normal, despite this whole COVID situation. But I was enrolling a student earlier this afternoon, and kind of prompted me to go ahead and come to this meeting just to kind of tell you what we have to due to schedule a new student and how it is becoming increasingly almost impossible at this point to schedule kids for 7 classes, giving them electives that they're interested in, giving them, of course, the core classes that they're required to take, and then adhering to the caps that we have in place at Elko High School. For a lot of our core classes, it's at 30. I mean, there's different numbers per core classes, but we're approaching or nearing those cap levels. Not only do we have to look at that when we're scheduling the students, we have to now also look at the A and B cohorts that were assigned. And Mr. Farmer did a phenomenal job on doing that. That was a huge task to undertake. We have to now look at the A-B cohorts, and before we issue the schedule to the kids, we have to make sure that we're also adhering to the balance between the A and the B cohort. Like I said, I just did a student before I came here. One of the classes he requested was full, so I had to hop on the phone, call he and the parents, which is no problem. That's my job. I'm happy to do it. I want the kids to be happy. But I had to also take probably another 15 minutes to adjust some of his classes because it caused the AB cohorts to be imbalanced. So you can imagine that with 29, possibly 49 more kids to enroll or register at Elko High School, what the concerns are. And it's myself and a couple colleagues. There's just 3 counselors at Elko High School. We're happy to do that, and we're working, like Mr. Wickersham said, we're happy to work. We work long days, and we want to do what's right for the kids. But my concern is what happens when we run out of space and we cannot put any more kids to keep those cohorts balanced. That's going to happen. Also, of course, as a counselor, I'm concerned for the well-being of the teens. I know it's been so tragic. I don't even know what to say, but their whole world has been turned upside down. And like everybody else in the room has said, we want to go back to school, but my concern is we need to be looking at safety for everyone involved. At Elko High School, it doesn't seem feasible for us to be safe, and we want that. I would probably lean towards online learning to start with, to make sure everybody's safe, to make sure our numbers in Elko County, go down with COVID, and then bring everybody back when it's safe and we can, do what's right for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, and we appreciate that perspective from the counselor. We'll go ahead and move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. So we have a presentation this evening from the Northeastern Nevada Regional Professional Development Program, and Mr. Walls is going to introduce our guest speaker.
You should give it. I'm just coming to introduce you guys, and then I'm sitting back down. So, yeah, to prepare our staff for our hybrid learning plan and/or distance, but specifically the distance portion of the hybrid learning plan, we co-op with our partners at the Northeastern Nevada Regional Professional Development Program, and they put together a 5-day training. Those 5 days that we asked you guys to approve, delaying the start of the school year, we're using for professional development for our teachers. So they put together 5 days of training, and they're just coming tonight to just give you guys just a few minutes description and maybe answer a couple of questions about what they're going to be sharing with teachers as far as guiding their lesson preparation and delivery to the kids. And so I'll introduce them. That's what I'm here for. So we have Trina Parker and Annie Hicks here from NNOPDP to visit with you guys tonight. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you. So we don't do our work where we turn our backs. It feels a little awkward, and we have masks on, which is the new normal. So I'll let Trina start.
So we are happy to be here tonight to share with you a little bit of what we have planned. We felt like it was an amazing challenge and opportunity for us to be able to work with Elko County to provide professional development for 5 days prior to an unprecedented school year. It gave us pause as to how we could meet the needs of 750 teachers and some support staff as well, with the limited staff that we have. And also not knowing what was in store for teachers and what we could provide that would be helpful for them no matter what the circumstances turn out to be. And that was kind of our goal. And in the end, our mantra became, the learning continues no matter where students are. Because we don't know. We don't know what the final decision is going to be, and even if it's a final decision today, that doesn't mean that it's going to be a final decision tomorrow. So we want to acknowledge the difficulty of all of you and of all of our school folks out here, how difficult that is, our parents. We understand that, how difficult it is, and I'd like Annie to go ahead and talk about the 5-day overview, an overview of the 5 days, what we have planned.
Is it possible to, just as I'm getting started, if we could show on the screen the playlist example that we sent to Mac, or? Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
It's disabled, so I need the host, maybe Mac, or to allow me to be able to share it.
While that goes on, we know how technology works. We'll just start. So with our 5 days, thinking about the reality of what we had and knowing that teachers were facing 1,000 unknowns and essentially needed to start in the middle, we landed on the learning has to continue no matter where students are, whether that's with us in our classrooms, learning out of class in another context, back and forth, or whatever. With that in mind, we put together 5 days of professional learning that is designed to help teachers move from day one, where I'm shifting my thinking from planning maybe in big chunks to a mini unit to smaller chunks of time and smaller objectives that are reasonable. Like, what do I want my kids to know and be able to do in 2 weeks rather than 6 weeks? From there, we move into what kinds of learning opportunities can I design for my students strategically that are synchronous, happening in real time, or asynchronous, happening either as independent work or as work they're doing when they're learning and they're not with me in my classroom. From day 3, we move on to how do you take those units, if you will, and how do you craft it in a way that makes sense to students and to families who are now our learning partners. They're learning coaches right alongside us, which is where they should be. And so we're really excited about that possibility. And for that, we've integrated an online and blended learning best practice called the playlist model. Some of you may be familiar with it. Hopefully on the screen, we can show you an example from day 1. From the playlist, we move into how do I create a cohesive learning environment for my students, no matter where that learning is happening. And then day 5, how do I connect with and communicate with my families so that they really do become learning partners? They know what their student should be working on, where their student needs to get to. They also have access to resources that help them to get there. We scaffold it for them, we support them through that process. By the time teachers are done, our hope is that they're able to envision new possibilities for the coming year in a way that maybe we haven't been able to before, but moving from that place where it feels like crisis to a place where it feels like possibility, because now I have concrete, actionable steps I can take, concrete, actionable places that I can begin, no matter what is happening. So that's our plan, if you will. I'll let Trina add on to that.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about the playlist. Each day that teachers attend this professional learning opportunity, they are presented a playlist. The playlist is similar to a roadmap. So it guides teachers through the learning, whether that happens asynchronously on their own, at their own pace, maybe at their own choice, which items am I going to do and in what order and things. And it also guides them with the synchronous opportunities that we've provided. So this is a model of synchronous and asynchronous learning. Synchronous learning is where I'm with you. I'm doing what you're doing at the same pace that you are. Recognizing that synchronous and asynchronous learning take place even in a live setting. When I have students with me, sometimes we're doing the same thing at the same time, and sometimes students are working independently or in small groups and so on. So those are examples of how that takes place in a live classroom. It can also take place online via Zoom sessions. So we have given it our best shot to provide a range of learning opportunities to meet the needs of every teacher in Elko County, and to provide a model of how they might use something similar to this in their classrooms and to meet the needs of students. So this roadmap, our roadmap, yours could be different. There's a lot of ways to create one of these. I'll just give you a couple of key points. The learning in our playlist is intended to take place sequentially for the most part, except for the Zoom sessions. We have aligned it with NEPF. So there's a section called Activate. There's a section called Engage. There's a section called Collaborate. There's a section called Reflect and Share. So in the Activate section, we're kind of addressing NEPF Standard 1, where we activate prior knowledge before we start building and attaching new knowledge so that those things have a place to hang. In the Engage section, teachers are given a wide range of learning opportunities that they can take advantage of, and hopefully many resources that maybe they haven't seen, and that maybe it's nice, I think, to have somebody collect those and guide those. So that's the purpose of that. In the Collaborate section, teachers have an opportunity to meet with other grade level teachers and content area teachers to talk about how they're meeting those challenges and how the learning is going throughout the day. Teachers are given an opportunity to reflect and then to share, which is sort of the metacognitive piece, I guess. How are you doing? How's your learning going? It's also an opportunity, again, to share with other people of similar grade levels and content areas. So as we're working to produce things, Sarah mentioned the difficulty of producing things for students that are high quality. So if I have access as a second grade teacher to the things that my colleagues are producing, it's going to give me ideas. Even if we don't all end up with the same stuff on the same page, we can still get ideas from one another. So that's really how the playlist works. Everything that a learner would need is on the playlist. So the links are there. The directions are there. If I were a teacher and I were using this, everything that my learners need to access the learning and to continue it, no matter where they are, is on the playlist. And so that a families as learning coaches, which we really are going to be dependent upon, they can also follow a playlist. Gives them one place to go to be able to follow that learning. Teachers will need to think strategically about how to order the things on the playlist, how to provide that learning. Sarah mentioned making video, which is a great thing to add to a playlist. When kids see you and your face, helping them along and giving lessons, short lessons, and then asking them to go off and do things or providing directions and so on. As she mentioned, it's extremely time consuming. We're asking teachers to do a tremendous amount to be able to teach live every single day and to be able to provide quality online learning as well. But we are hoping to be able to help teachers to do that no matter what context they end up teaching in.
So I would say, just in closing, it's a lot to throw out. I know a lot of teachers have already started to access the learning, and they probably feel a little overwhelmed, and that's okay. We're overwhelmed too. We're shifting in just the same ways. Trina today had to Zoom me in and carry a laptop to a group of teachers. I mean, we're right there with you, figuring out the awkward moments online. But our hope is that we really are going to provide every teacher an opportunity to figure out, what can I do to make learning continue no matter what, and what possibilities can I truly not just envision but actually realize in my classroom. How do I use my agency and my expertise to serve my students and my families. And I really do think, although it's not perfect, we really do have something put together that will do that for those teachers so that there's some hope ahead and not just crisis. So thank you for your time. We're so honored to be here. We hope that's clear.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? We are grateful to partner with you so that we can have great PD for our teachers. Thank you.
And I just wanted to add that partnership is not a one and done. We will continue to work with the PDP to provide continuous and well-planned professional development for our teachers and our staff throughout the school year and beyond this school year. It really is something that we're moving forward with a plan that it will continue. We will collect information from our teachers and from our staff on what's working and what they're looking for. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to item 2.1, receipt, review, and possible approval of potential changes and modifications to the school reopening plan. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. So I've mentioned in the past two board meetings that we've had that things are changing quickly and often. And anything that we have presented has the potential to change and a need for modification. An example of that is the modifications to the reopening plan in regards to social distancing in elementary and middle school, and the mandate to the requirement to wear the face masks. So right now, over the week, since the last board meeting, I've been doing research and speaking with our partners at the Nevada Department of Education. You remember correctly, on July 28th, the board agreed, as Mr. Walls had mentioned, agreed to allow for the conversion of 5 days to become professional development days. This was something that was allowed for in the governor's directive, that we could make that change if the board approved. And as you've heard tonight, there's a lot of learning that's going to happen in 5 very short days. So I have discovered, and again, in talking to the Department of Education, and I got the final word yesterday, that there is actually an additional 5 days that we may use to for professional development. And given the complexity of the task ahead of our teachers with learning how to work in that distance learning, whether it be distance learning portion of the program or distance learning, and those times when schools likely will have to close because of outbreaks and whatnot, and remember, we'll be pivoting back and forth. But in order to give them that really critical time so that we can have a high quality programming in the distance learning piece of it, I am requesting of the board and have found out from the Department of Education that this is acceptable for an additional 4 days of professional development for our professionals, which will move the school year start date back to September 8th. And according to the governor's directives, that is an acceptable change for this school year.
Discussion from the board.
That doesn't change the end date next spring?
Correct. This year it will not.
This year.
This year, correct.
I guess I don't have enough context yet to ask questions in this case. Because depending on the model that we're going to follow, I guess that would depend on those extra 4 days, or that doesn't matter, Dr. Robinson?
Well, I would suggest that despite the model, there's a distance education piece. And so if in the hybrid model, there's half of the model is the distance education piece. And as you've heard, it's a very complex model to follow. And the distance education piece is extremely unique and we need time. On those occasions where we will be going to full distance education because there is an outbreak, and I've got some information on that because I know that was asked about what that would look like. But on those occasions when we would go to full distance learning for whatever amount of time, that's the distance learning piece. And so it is in the both of those models that were approved by the board. And I know that there's a great concern in the community and among our professionals that the experience is a quality experience for our children. What we had happen in the spring was crisis management. It wasn't distance learning. What we're providing for students at the start of the school year is that distant learning piece, and we need to make sure we're prepared.
And I know this has been discussed before, but a lot of people are concerned about accountability, whether it's the teachers, the students, whatever, and talk to us about accountability in the distance learning model.
In the distance learning model, it is the same as what's expected in the classroom, and that is that children are in attendance and that children are participating and they're giving their best effort. And in the same, so there is an accountability for the work that they do and the work that they produce and the work that they turn in, just as there is in normal circumstances and a normal experience in the everyday classroom. What happened in the spring, again, was a response to crisis management, and that those components will not exist in this program that we're making.
On distance days, will students be required, say a kindergartner, to sit in front of their Chromebook for all of the hours that they would normally be in school?
No, as our presenters mentioned, there is synchronous learning and there's asynchronous learning. And so there will be opportunities in the distance learning portion where students are right there live. There may be something that's happening with a teacher that they're holding a class and inviting their students or in participating in distance learning. There may be opportunities for synchronous learning. There's also the asynchronous, which allows more flexibility for families. So families, I've heard families ask, can I work with my child after I get home from work? And that's the asynchronous part and is the flexible part that allows families to work on their schooling at a time that is best suited for them.
I know that question has come up a lot in the comments. Those kinds of questions are pretty common. Mr. Zeisler, you started taking your mask off.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait on that one.
All right, any other questions from the board?
Madam Chairman?
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, kind of a follow-up with the last question with regards to the kindergarten student. With the high school, am I assuming, or do we literally have an idea with the periods that normally go on? An example, Elko High School, with a 6 or 7 period day, would the students log on for first period between 7:30 and 8:35? And then the students would log on for their second period class. This would be going on all day long, but is that the way the distance learning would be in the hybrid model? I'm a little go ahead.
Okay, in the distance learning piece of it, in the model of it, again, there's the opportunity for synchronous learning, and there would be opportunities for students to log in at particular times to participate and engage in the learning that's going on. And there are times for the asynchronous learning that would happen, and so that it would be, again, that flexibility of happening at a time that is not when everybody has to gather together.
Okay.
Ira, you got a question?
Did Washington County go back to school today? I've heard they did, I've heard they didn't, I've heard they went. Everybody went back like it was a normal school year. What's the?
No, they didn't do that because I know they have to follow their model, which is partial hybrid model. I don't know though if school started. I know they were out. A couple of schools had closed because of a transmission, and they had a fire, I think, those two combined. So I don't know.
Washoe County did start today, and talking with my two kids, one's a counselor and other's an instructor. Things went fairly smooth with all of the in-person education that took place today, at least at two of the high schools. And there hasn't been any information coming out that's any different. So things went way smoother than they thought it was going to go for today.
In the hybrid model.
Yes, they were in the hybrid model. Half of the kids, the A cohort, and tomorrow they'll have a different group. Yesterday, they had canceled the first day based upon the fire over in Loyalton. Too much smoke in the valley.
Madam Chairman, I have a question for Dr. Robinson.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Doctor. So speaking of the Washoe County schools opening, I wonder, have any of our administrators, the reopening committee, or yourself talked with anybody at Washoe? How is it different for them than for us as far, do they have bigger classrooms than we do? How are they able to maintain the social distancing, et cetera, in their hybrid model? But we seem to be struggling to do that, I guess, would be my question. And I think perhaps we should be talking with them, since they are already opened and they're going to be going through some transitions, obviously. And I think, we're lucky that they opened before we are, so we can learn a lot from what they're doing.
I can't answer to the buildings, the differences in the buildings and why that may have less of a challenge for them. I'm not familiar with the Washoe County. I know that we as an association of superintendents, we speak often and share ideas and share challenges and potential solutions, and sometimes we come up with no answer. Many times we are all in the same boat of not quite getting to that perfect solution. I have not spoken to the superintendent in Washoe specifically about that, but I certainly can.
And we do know, they do have larger buildings and more schools than we do. A lot of our district is still in modulars, which automatically puts our square footage much smaller than the average classroom size. I think an average classroom size is 900 square feet. Those modulars are, after being in one yesterday, it felt significantly smaller. I know it's not significant, but being in them, and that is an advantage that Washoe has over us. We are pay-as-you-go, so we tend to underbuild in this county with all of our public buildings. Our county building is too small, our schools are too small, and so Washoe has that advantage. They are also educating some of their children outside. I don't know if that's something we want to explore, given that we can get up to over 100 degrees at the beginning of the school year. So that is something they're also and they're contending with it now because of the ash. That was problematic, and they have not explained how they're going to account for when it gets cold.
Since we're on the Washoe topic there, unless they changed something recently, Washoe younger, the primary grades were going full classroom, not a hybrid.
A version of that, yeah.
A version of it. I watched the meeting because I wanted to learn about what they were doing, and essentially it is a version. They're not all full children in the classroom. They have half the children in the classroom, and this is not in every building as I understood it. And again, this was from watching the meeting. They have half the children in classrooms in the buildings that will accommodate this, and half the children in areas such as auditoriums, whatnot, and they have non-certificated people supervising.
And I seem to remember Washoe did not heed the advice of the state health team, but went with other people. So they've opened themselves up to more liability, correct?
As I understand it, the Washoe County Health and Human Services made the recommendation that they go pure distance learning, and they did not.
Yep.
Other questions from the board?
I mean, it's probably beating a dead horse, but what are we gonna do about the classrooms that are too small?
Well, there are a number of details like this that we are discovering. As I said, we created the sculpture, the structure of the plan, and now as we are making it happen, we're working through a significant number of challenges that are coming up as you start to work with the details. There is the ability in some instances to apply to the state for waivers. The ability to have those approved are not known to us at this point. Again, speaking to my colleagues across the state, they've had some approved. They have not had this experience that I've, and anyone that I've spoken to about, but they have had some success with some, mostly when it comes to getting enough kids on the bus for the duration of a bus ride, and some the state has not approved, which leaves them in a position of trying to figure out what the next step will be.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm assuming you want us to maybe make a motion on the dates.
I think that would be appropriate.
And I just want, well, I'll just go ahead and make it. I've moved to push the start date back to the 8th. Is that
September
correct?
8th.
With the 4
Right,
extra
the day
days?
after.
And then I had some more questions of the administrators, actually, about that situation.
Thank you. I have a motion to move the start date back to September 8th. Do we have a
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney. Any discussion?
Do we need a drop dead date? I feel like we've maybe shot for the moon and we're missing it a little bit. We're an awesome county. We will do whatever's asked of us. We really will. We'll find a way to make it work, but we might be, and we are, okay, let's just say it, we are in an untenable situation. And I know nobody wants to say this or think this, but we might have to go online. At what point do we make that decision? Because parents are going absolutely mad. I'm going mad with it. So, we need to know what the school year looks like. We can push the date back September 8th, assuming we're going into hybrid, but at what point? The classrooms aren't gonna get any bigger.
Well, we can still talk about that tonight, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, just as long as that.
Because I have lots of questions about that very situation, because I'm just waiting for Dr. Robinson to tell us more, unless you don't have any more. About the possibility of online versus the hybrid.
Going online?
Yeah.
Is that hybrid?
Can I pause this really fast? We have a
Yeah.
motion, but no second.
Okay.
Oh, no, wait, Mr. Cooney, you did second. Okay, sorry. Now continue. Go ahead. I just want to make sure we have everything going. Now we're discussing.
Yeah, well, our role is to provide for you all the information that we have about the process that we're going through in making the plans that were approved come alive and to work. And as you've heard, there are a number of challenges. Ultimately, the ultimate decision lies in the lap of the board. So, if you have more questions, if you have questions in helping you to make that decision, if that is a place that you are finding yourself, then we'll be happy to answer your question.
Okay, great.
Madam Chairman?
Oh,
yes.
Go ahead, Jim.
One of the things, the question I didn't hear, first of all, online, you guys aren't coming across very loud whatsoever. And I've had a couple of comments coming in with regards to hopefully people can speak up. But my question, and I don't think that I heard it during the presentation from the PDP, is when are we going to be starting that? Is there a calendar date so teachers have an idea of when this professional development is going to start? Is it going to start tomorrow? Is it going to start on Thursday? I didn't hear any specific with regards to that. I think it ties in with the motion that by changing the date, that may also be a change within what the schedule is going to be for the professional development.
So teachers are returning tomorrow, and the professional development that you just heard about will start tomorrow for them. By
Okay.
pushing the school year back, it gives them an additional 4 days for professional development and for preparation.
Thank you.
And I made the motion just so I want to give credit to Jim, because Jim always chides me for, discussing things without having a motion on the floor. So Mr. Parley, pro expert, that we should probably do that. I was wondering if any of the principals would be willing to speak to how they might use that, or if that would benefit them by having that late start date. Or maybe
I know we have other programs coming in providing training too, so that extra 4 days would be very beneficial for setting up classrooms. We have iReady coming in, reading a math program a day each through Zoom for our teachers. So those 4 days would definitely be beneficial for us.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham.
I'm Stacy Zeisler. I'm the Teachers Union President. I would hope that those 4 days would allow us time in our classrooms to prepare for whatever model we're in so we can rock this. So I would really encourage you to vote for those 4 days so that we can use the training that we're going to get from the NNR PDP, and then we can implement those things before we have students in our classrooms. So I would strongly encourage you to vote for this on the Teachers Union behalf.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board on this motion? All right, all in favor of the motion to move the start date back to September 8th to provide for more professional development time, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye, and the start date is moved back to September 8th to provide for that training. Any other discussion on this item? I know we have a lot, so don't be shy. I will just point out, as I am reading through the online comments, we have many people saying, please don't go all online, and just as many people saying, please go online. And we have been receiving numbers from Dr. Robinson of people that are enrolling in our virtual academy. And the virtual academy is soon to be the 3rd largest school in our district. And I don't think our virtual...
It is as of today.
Oh, as of today. I haven't seen today's numbers. I don't think our virtual academy was set up to be the 3rd largest school in our district. We have fantastic teachers in our district, and we want to be utilizing our teachers to teach their students. And the more I've talked to people over the last week, today I was on the phone all day long, fielding texts and trying to respond to emails. And the more I talk to people, the more people say, let's take our time, make this right, do professional development, get our teachers ready to do the online component by starting online, and then we reevaluate as we move into the year, whether it's a month, whether it's 6 weeks, 9 weeks, we reevaluate, and if we're ready, then we move into the hybrid model. And I'm hearing that a lot. Like I say, I'm not going to read every comment because there are a lot of comments, but a lot of them are questions that have been asked in the past about, masks, about specific procedures during the school day. And those questions, I believe, can be answered by your school administrators. So please contact your school administrators. But by and large, what I've been hearing over the last week is even people who said, I just want my child to go back in the classroom, are now saying, let's take time, let's start online, and when we're ready and things are less restrictive and Elko County has this, has COVID under control, then let's look at going back into the classroom. Because whether you agree with what the governor is saying, whether we agree with the mandates coming from the state, our schools have to function in that capacity. Our administrators have to make sure they follow all of those protocols. And we want our administrators to be working with teachers, helping them use best practices. We want our teachers to be working with students, helping them to learn, not fussing with masks, not saying, scoot apart, hey, you're too close. I don't think that's a good use of our teachers and administrators, that our tax dollars go to pay their salaries, because we want them to educate our kids. And right now, a lot of the administrators, I didn't get to talk to every administrator in the county, and I apologize for that, but I was on the phone a lot today. A lot of the administrators are saying, give us the time. We'll do what you need us to do because we're educators, and that's what we do. We'll make it work. But let's go back and let's do it right. And the overarching, I don't know how many overwords I can use, response is, let's start online so that we have time, and instead of applying for a variance on every little thing, oh, can we apply for a variance to get 2 more desks in this classroom because we can't fit everybody? Let's get to the point where we are out of the red zone. Like I say, whether you agree with it or not, that's where we are. And we can say, hey, we can put all of those kids in a classroom, and we don't have to stress about those little details that we want our educators to be educating, not stressing about details.
So since you broached the subject, I will make a motion to move to online for the first 9 weeks and then reevaluate at the first 9 weeks. And I have lots more questions.
Okay, we have a motion to move online for the first 9 weeks. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion from the board.
I'd like to make a few comments. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with saying for the first 9 weeks, because we don't know what's going to happen. And now you're setting a specific time period to how much online learning versus, maybe take it a couple weeks at a time to see where we're at. But I also wanted to ask, what about schools like Jackpot and the rural schools, where it was already determined that they have plenty of space for kids to go back on a everyday basis? Would they still be able to do that, or does your motion include absolutely the entire school district goes to online learning?
That was not the intent of my emotion, because I had questions about that too, about Jackpot still opening fully and the rural schools.
Dr. Robinson, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to point out that after we started to work out these details and recognize what the challenges were, the question about whether Jackpot would be able to open up fully has come up. And we don't know that, given the restrictions that are in place, that would be able to happen. As far as the smaller rural schools go, that hasn't changed. They still, it would be acceptable for them to be able to open as planned, because they still meet the requirements of size, the number of students, the size of the classrooms, the ability to be able to wear the masks, and the scheduling would still work.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Cooney.
One of the things, and with this particular motion, a question that comes up with online learning. I had a parent that contacted me today that was talking about they had signed up, but they had signed up for distance learning, and they had chosen the virtual academy, and their main concern was they don't have an option, or they had misinformation when they were looking at signing up. So they couldn't, their students could not return back to school if we did the hybrid model or everybody back until the end of the semester. I think there's quite a bit of confusion out there when we say online. We've got online with what we're doing with professional development, but then the other online is the virtual academy. So I don't want to muddy the waters any more than it already is. But I think we've got some other issues that we may have to deal with regards to that, quote unquote, the distance learning. And I don't know what the information that's out there from the district to these parents, but I think there is still a great deal of confusion as to how this thing works.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney.
So I can respond to that. The directive that parent was calling from was under the assumption that the board, in its previous decisions, we were going to only a hybrid learning model. And under that directive, following the mandates from the governor and the directions of the board, that our only distance learning platform at that time would be NNVA. And that if students began the school year in NNVA, that it would benefit the students, particularly the high school students, if they started classes in NNVA and got any distance into those classes, that it would be beneficial to stay in those classes until the end of the semester. What the previous motion has already done by setting the school year back until September 8th, school has not started yet. So any parent, any student who is currently enrolled in NNVA may unenroll in NNVA and re-enroll back in their school of zone attendance. Again, that was done, that message that went out following that earlier was done under the board directives that had established what hybrid education was going to look like at the time. That, of course, has changed. So any student that enrolled in NNVA, if the board decides to go full distance ed for 9 weeks, is more than welcome to unenroll in NNVA and enroll into their zone school. Any, as of this afternoon, was it 837 of those students? Keep in mind that school was designed to hold about 50 and is run out of the curriculum office by myself and my administrative assistant. That's it. That's the entire staff of the school. So take that for what it will.
But there are teachers on the other side of that.
There are teachers on the other side provided by the Edgenuity company. We've been in talks with the Edgenuity company, and they are running out of Nevada licensed teachers in the K-5 realm. In fact, we were asked whether or not non-Nevada licensed teachers would be approved for that program. And we said no. So we're already looking at a potential cap in that school.
Thank you, Mr. McEnany, for that information. That does help out, and I think it does make it clearer. I guess the only question is if the board wants to go to the all distance learning.
Is there extra costs associated with that, Mr. McEnany, with those enrollments?
There are extensive costs associated with enrollments. I believe
Extra
Dr.
though?
Robinson.
Extra? Nothing that we have budgeted for this fiscal year.
So a contract was signed with Edgenuity to provide teachers this summer following the model of what we've had in the past. I believe Dr. Robinson has the numbers of extra costs that we've anticipated. Again, the school has gone from 53 students to over 800. So yes, there are extensive costs associated with that.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a comment. I would like to just urge the board, we've just given ourselves an extension to September 8th. I would like to wait and see how things do pan out in Washoe County. I think we have some time to see if they can make their model work or not before we need to make this decision, whether or not we go to an online only learning situation. And I feel like, we're rushing into the online only decision now. We have
I'll change your mind. I'll change your mind, Candace. I've got more questions and comments, lots of them, actually.
Okay, I just think we have a reprieve. We have some time to think it over and see how things are going to pan out. That was my comment. Mr. McEnany, my question to you would be, if after, if we went to an online,
Candace, he just left the room for a moment, so hold your question.
okay, I'll hold it.
Okay, oh, Mr. Walls says he can help, and Mr. McEnany just came back in the room to answer. He's doing a good job social distancing.
So my question, as far as the virtual academy goes, is, you know, if we do an online situation for X number of weeks or whatever, then are those parents, and then if we go to a hybrid model and parents still want to do distance learning with their children, are they going to be able to enroll their child back in the virtual academy, or how is that going to work for those parents who were already pretty much on board with wanting their child to do the distance learning for the whole, the virtual academy for the whole semester?
So I would say that coming into the virtual academy late is detrimental to the student's progress because the last day of the semester does not change. However, the start date does, and if a student enters into NNVA a month and a half or 2 months down the road, they have to start at day 1 of the class. So they have now lost 2 months of educational opportunity, but the end of the semester is still the end of the semester. And we actually encourage parents in a regular year not to enroll except at the semesters. And if they do, it becomes very, very difficult for them to successfully complete the class. So that's, as far as the member's question, I think that is what I can provide. So could they enroll? Yes. Would we advise it? Probably not.
Okay, thank you.
I'm in agreement with Candace on waiting, going the first 9 weeks online. In March, when this thing started, everybody was told that if you stay home for 2 weeks, this thing will go away. And we're still in the middle of this, and 9 weeks from now, we don't have any idea what this thing's gonna look like. And kids get the best education when they're in front of a teacher, and we need to bail into this because we can keep kicking this can down the road, but we need to educate kids, and putting it off and putting it off. I mean, nobody knows what this is gonna look like next week. Nobody knows what it's gonna look like in 9 weeks, but we need to do the best job we can by the kids in Elko County.
May I scare you a bit?
You can try.
Okay, good. I know there's one past ECTA president here and a current ECTA president, and I'm a former ECTA president, and I know one of the pressing issues all the time was the insurance fund and having to pour money into that thing almost every year or every semester because it's great insurance. What number of intensive care cases would cause that pool, then the insurance pool, to be depleted?
3.
How many?
3.
Well, we currently infuse in the absence of COVID, we infuse the self-insurance fund by anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million a year to keep it solvent. So there's a stop-loss liability attached to our insurance plan where a single event can only cost the district so much, but it's per event. It's not a collective deductible.
And if that was insolvent, what would we do?
Well, I don't know if I have a clear answer for you on that, but
pay higher premiums on the backs of teachers and their attendants?
I mean, there's triggers in the CBA based on a turnaround, a monthly cost turnaround in a month. If it exceeds a certain threshold, we're required to get bargaining units together and discuss increases of premiums. The problem with it is we're capped by the Affordable Health Care Act to where you cannot increase premiums in any single plan year by more than 4%. So there's really no way to infuse that through an increase in premiums and maintain alliance with requirements of the Affordable Health Care Act.
And along the same category of insurance, do teachers, if for whatever reason, neglected their responsibilities in the classroom and were sued, does the district cover the cost of being sued by parents or some other entity?
The district's primary mechanism for liability insurance is the pool pact. When districts were removed from coverage through Senate Bill 4, the first thing we did was reach out to pool pact to ensure that we had liability coverage in the event of COVID-related injury. Is probably the best way to put it. And they clearly stated that we have zero coverage through the pool with any kind of COVID-related injury, illness, or death.
So the individual teacher would incur those costs?
I suppose so.
You're gonna put my family at risk for that.
I'm not.
Well, I mean, if we, I don't know what teacher would step into school at that point.
All right, Mr. Zeisler, you've got more questions?
I have tons of them.
Hold on to your seats.
Mr. Zeisler, just to clarify and put an end to the discussion on that.
Oh, I'm moving on. I'm good.
But if I could clarify, once we found out that the pool would not provide liability coverage, we reached out. We had our own legal counsel reach out to LP Insurance to find out if there are insurance carriers that could provide individual policies for people should they desire that, and unfortunately the answer to that is also no.
You, for sure. One of the things that was said to me, and kind of the reason why I did the 9-week part of the motion is that if we do have an outbreak, we're going to interrupt a school in the midst of a hybrid model and then have to wait a time period and then put students back in who are already enjoying the social components of school. Correct? They'd be online anyway, right? If a school had an outbreak?
Right, so the state just recently released guidelines that are hot off the press. And what we do in the event that there is an outbreak from one instance of a positive case to several. There are 4 different levels, and they range from closing the school anywhere from 24 hours to a period of time, 14 days and beyond.
I think that's a pretty hard thing to, start our kids back in school, and then we have someone with a fever, and we have to close the school for 24 hours, and parents get a phone call at 5 o'clock at night saying, hey, I'm sorry, I know your child is supposed to come to school tomorrow, but we have to have the school closed. And that parent has to figure out, what do I do with my child? Or, I'm sorry, we had an outbreak, we're gonna have to close the school for 2 weeks. And I just feel like the consistency of learning would be gone if, as we have these cases come in, or someone, I mean, every symptom of COVID is a symptom of lots of other sicknesses. But if we have a child come to school with a fever, we know we have to be very mindful of that, send them home, whatever we need to do. But I just think we would have no consistency in learning, knowing that we may have to close the school from 24 hours to beyond 14 days. And looking at that, I just think that's pretty hard to say, hey, we're gonna go ahead and open up, and then we're not gonna be open anyway. So let's use the skills of our teachers, use the skills that they're learning in professional development, go online. Students will be learning, teachers will be teaching. we'll be utilizing the talent we have in our district to get education out to our students in the best manner that will be uninterrupted. Those are my thoughts on that. Any other thoughts from the board?
Yep. So speaking of that, I do have some reservations about going online, so it's not all rosy. The one question I really want to get answered is infrastructure and what we would do with students who would not have access to internet or at least unreliable internet. Our one parent had commented about that. Is there something that can be done? Could we bus students into a facility somewhere where they would be able to access computers and they'd be the only ones? Or do we have plans or make plans?
So we have, in discussions with our director of IT, we have the infrastructure within the school system set up so that we can, because we have to, again, remembering that the distance education piece is a large component of the hybrid model. So we are prepared in that way. It's a challenge to make sure that we have connectivity across the district. As far as the Chromebooks go, we're prepared to have a device for every student. Again, regardless of the model, that's something we need to make sure we're prepared to do, and we're ready with that. I think principals have set up schedules and how they're going to be distributing Chromebooks and devices to students. As far as the connectivity goes, we are working with our partners and increasing that and making it available for our families, recognizing that we have work to do in that area, but we are working steady on it. We purchased 1,000 hotspots so that with the CARES money, so that we could meet the needs of our families, and now we have put out a call to families to please let us know so we can identify the number of families that need assistance with connectivity, and we can then distribute accordingly and then determine how much more of a challenge it is beyond that. And the Department of Education is also working with private partners in helping to mitigate that concern, because that's statewide, that concern. And so we're working with the State Department and, again, getting them the numbers so that we can continue to work on solutions.
If the motion doesn't pass, one of my former students asked the question, can parents sign waivers to get kids into the classroom?
We, as a public entity, we cannot make a condition of providing an education. We can't make it conditional, and we cannot have them require somebody to sign a waiver on condition that their child receives an education.
So no to waivers.
Correct.
Brian, it sounds like online they may need you to actually talk into your mic, even though you've moved your mask. Just talk into your mic so they can hear you.
Am I not using my teacher voice? Sorry.
Thank you. So
Madam Chairman?
just to be clear on that one, we've had several people ask about, could I just sign a waiver and send my child? And the answer is no. We cannot legally have parents sign waivers to send their child to school. We're a public school. We cannot ask them to sign a waiver so that they can send their child to school.
Okay, and then if we did go online, if we approve the, or pass the motion, could it be possible to do a graduated approach, since the schools will be empty, with maybe kindergarten and first grade, and allow them to start in the classrooms?
Yes, we can make a transitional hybrid model, and we can take a look at the pieces of the model as it was presented to the board, and we can make modifications to that component of the overall plan, and that work can be done and presented to the board.
So this extra time would afford us the opportunity to work on something like that.
Correct.
And then would teachers be at school in the online format, or would they be at home again?
In the plan that was approved by the board, the distance learning model included teachers working in their classrooms.
And then, I'm sorry, jumped ahead with the graduated situation. Could you also have a situation, and maybe Mrs. Birdsell could speak to this, where you would have a content expert for maybe 1 week and then maybe bring students back into the labs, since we'll have space, and especially when you have the new STEM facility at Elko High. I know I'm focusing on Elko High because that's what I know, but maybe the other schools could do something similar, labs at Adobe, labs at the smaller schools that could be occupied with minimal numbers of students, because I know those areas tend to be larger.
You know, I want to, before I answer specifically, I believe that at any point we can make modifications to the plans. And so what you're talking about, to me, seems to be a modification to the plan. And I know that if the modifications can be made, approved by the board, and then submitted to the Department of Education. So I would suggest that that sort of change would fall under that. But I'd want to make sure that I'm giving you correct information.
Okay, and I know back in the day, we were always concerned about the opposite of what's happening now, is large numbers in labs, and OSHA always had an opinion on that. Would they be the entity that would govern some of that and opening, not even just science labs, but the construction lab, like you had mentioned, Mr. Wickersham, and the possibly the HVAC system or welding?
Again, I'd want to look into that information, but yes, if that's, you know, if we work in partnership with OSHA to get approvals on what happens in our classrooms, then we would continue with that.
And then I was also wondering, based on Shelley Canepa's comments, would there be counseling opportunities for students for mental health, like via Zoom or similar programs, one-on-one, that counselors would be doing?
Absolutely. Those types of services will continue regardless of the model. They'll continue. They'll have to make adaptations to how services are delivered. Again, whether that be in a hybrid model or a pure distance learning model, there are going to have to be modifications to the delivery of services.
And the biggest one, and I know you're an expert in this area, is doing special ed at school to address the concerns by those parents, or even special services in general.
Yeah, the same would apply in order to provide services for students in, again, whether it be the hybrid, which is the half and half, or it be the pure distance learning. The IEPs will have to be looked at and rewritten to meet the model that our students are in, and services, and it would identify how services are provided to students.
Madam Chairman, I had a question for Mrs. Zeisler.
Okay.
I spoke with John Ellison today, and he assured me that the teachers union negotiated in SB4 that the teachers would not be held liable for any COVID-19 cases that might appear in their classroom. Can you speak to that?
Yes. What I've been told is that we can be named in a suit if you are a teachers union person. If you are signed up for the teachers union, you have coverage through them. But in our master agreement with Elko County School District, we do not have any liability insurance. That would be something we would have to negotiate with the district. And at this time, I don't know how in favor all of you would be of that, because you already have enough liability on your heads as a board, and I negotiate with you ultimately. So yes, it is more an employer being able to sue an employee, but a teacher can be named in a lawsuit at any time.
And they can
But to
individual
clarify,
Go ahead, Candace.
so just to clarify though, if you are a member of the teachers union, then you would be protected. Is that correct?
Well, you would have an attorney. Yes, you have a policy through them, so you would be assigned one of their attorneys. Correct.
All right.
But if you are not if you are not a member of the teachers union, you do not have that under our current master agreement with the school district.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you very
I'm
much.
sorry I asked you that question. That was actually for the superintendent. Can we individually be held liable here on the board?
You're acting in the capacity of a board, of a body, the board, so it would not be necessarily individual liability, as I understand it. I don't want to give you legal advice, but as I understand it from our legal counsel, it would be as a body. And you'd want to get clarification from legal.
And we certainly open ourselves up to more liability if we did what Washoe does and ignores the experts.
Again, I'm not speaking as legal counsel, but it seems very clear that you're following the recommendations and certainly the directives of the governor. I couldn't speak to how what the response would be by going against the recommendation of the Department of Health and Human Services, who also, as an entity, has the authority to make decisions in regards to shutting down or changing models.
Mrs. Dastrup, if
Yes,
I may.
please.
I brought this up last week, that Washoe has a current lawsuit against them that was brought by OSHA and the Washoe County Classroom Teachers Association, because they're not following the proper guidelines.
Thank you. And Mrs. Zeisler has connections in Washoe County, so would you like to talk about the first day of school, how that went?
Sure, hold on, I gotta pull it up, otherwise I'll mess it all up.
So while you're doing that, I just wanted to say that the whole reason I have a lot of these questions, because I was doing brainstorming over the weekend, especially in regards to liability. And these are some of the things that I was looking at as far as teacher liability and trustee liability. And I believe in our role as trustees to protect financial resources, human resources, all of those things when it comes to giving the best education to our students. And if liability kept building up to the point where we'd have to probably not be able to provide those services to students because we'd have to rip teachers, and I'm painting a pretty bleak scenario, but I mean, that's essentially what could happen hypothetically, right?
Are you ready?
Go for it.
Okay, so this is from a teacher in Washoe County today, okay? I got these because she's listening to what we're talking about. In the hallway, it was impossible for students to follow directions. I told multiple students today to separate and keep distance from one another. Older kids thought the masks were a joke. The kids were forming groups all the time when students were moving throughout the hallways. Also, let's see. Oh, children that were not scheduled to be at school today showed up because they wanted to hang out with their friends that were on the opposite day. So the B kids showed up on A day because they wanted to hang out with their buddies that were on A day. And then the last thing she said was, my roommate, who is also a teacher, says staying 6 feet apart is a joke. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there, but that's the gist of most of it, so.
Okay, thank you, because we wanted to say, hey, how are things going in these other counties that have opened up? And I'm sure that's not the only example of what happened today, but we appreciate a Washoe teacher watching this and letting us know that did not go well. All right, other comments or questions from the board? All right, Jim or Candy, can you still hear? Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, with this particular motion, the motion itself stated for a 6-week period of time. Is that correct, Madam Chairman?
It was originally 9 weeks.
Okay. 9 weeks. I think that should be a shorter period of time, but I've argued for that before.
Do we really anticipate a fundamental change between 6 weeks and 9 weeks with this situation? I mean, honestly, the classroom sizes aren't going to change, the behavior of the students isn't going to change, and it puts it on the quarters, which is convenient for our educators. So I'm leaning strongly, obviously, to the 9-week, just for ease of that.
Madam Chairman, I would just like to ask the board to consider postponing this vote just until next week, until our next meeting. So we can, we'd have a little more information by then as far as how things are going.
Candace, you're missing a
just,
whole
you know,
room of shaking heads. I just saw a crazy wave go through the audience.
Yeah, and Candace, I appreciate that. I will say I have had people specifically call me and say, just make a decision. We don't care if it's the hybrid or the online. You know, this is what we would prefer. Some people have said we prefer the hybrid. Some people said we'd prefer the online, but they said, please make a decision tonight so we can make a decision for our family. And I think this has been a long, drawn-out process. This has been going on for months at this point, and people need some certainty. They need to know how their child is going back to school. And my personal opinion that I know is shared by many people who have contacted me and by many people in this room who are shaking their heads is we need to make a decision tonight. And as Dr. Robinson said, we can make adjustments to do a transitional hybrid model, which something of that nature we could talk about next week. You know, can we send kids into shop classes, into, you know, CTE classes? Can we use the labs for science classes? You know, obviously we will provide services for students that have IEPs. And I think if we make a decision tonight, those kinds of details can be worked out over the next week rather than the details of how are we going to keep kids from touching each other? How are we going to keep kids socially distanced? How you know, how am I as a teacher going to be able to help my first grader when I can't be any closer than 6 feet to that child? So I think this could give something solid to the families in our county so they can make decisions. I know when the NIAA came out with their guidance about moving sports, there were a lot of people really frustrated. I know my high school athletes were really frustrated that suddenly their sports were going to be pushed back for months. But we have had no questions about athletics since that guidance was given, because a decision was made and now we move on. And I feel like that's where we are as a board. We can decide on whether it's going to be 9 weeks, you know, half the semester. You know, I think we can talk about when to reevaluate. And maybe we want to say, let's reevaluate in a month. Let's reevaluate in 6 weeks. I think that we can look at, but I don't think we should put the parents of Elko County or the teachers or the administrators off any longer. They need to know. They need an answer, and they need to be able to train their staff. Parents need to be able to make decisions. Those who are in the virtual academy can say, hey, I'm going to now have my classroom teacher instead of a teacher somewhere else. And when we do get to go back to school, my child will already know their teacher. They'll already be part of that class. And I think that can make a huge difference to help families feel more confident in what's going to happen in Elko County School District as we move forward. Okay, please, we have a comment?
Isn't it 7 weeks since we're starting 2 weeks later to the end of the first quarter? Just a little logistic in that regard, so it changes the time frame.
I'm clearly not a teacher. I can't do the
And it
math.
might, because of the fair days and all of that, it
That is an
still
excellent
might not
point.
be exactly
Yeah.
9 calendar weeks. So I think it would be better if you made the motion based on at the end of the first 9 weeks,
And that way
rather than
we're
just
still
saying
in the
a time
quarters.
frame of 9 weeks out.
So the first quarter.
Yeah.
Okay, I amend my own motion.
Sorry.
You can't tell me what to do, Gretchen.
We had a second on that motion. Does the person who had a second, are they okay with amending that motion? Or do we need to go through a proper
Who
amendment?
seconded it? Was it me?
You
I'll
did.
second it again.
All right,
I'm
as long
losing
as-
the thread
as long
here.
as you're okay, as long
I'm
as
still
you're okay.
bothered by the 7 weeks, so.
All right, so we have got that change to, the motion now reads to go to distance learning to reevaluate at the end of the first quarter. All right. Any other discussion from the board? I will again say all the people who sent in public comment, we appreciate your public comments. Every one of them will be part of the minutes. In the interest of time, I can summarize, like I say, most of those comments are questions about really specific things about being in the hybrid model. You know, many comments about please have us go full distance learning, many comments about please have our kids in the classroom. And that's that's really a summary of all the comments. If everyone in this room really wishes me to read all the comments, please stand up and do some jumping jacks or something so I know you're still awake. If not, then just know everyone who made the comments, we have read them. We appreciate your input as we always do, and they will be in the official minutes of the board meeting. Any other questions from the board? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to go to distance learning to be reevaluated at the end of the first quarter. All in favor? Oh, hold on. I'm going to make one more comment. I think we should have this motion with the understanding that schools such as our rural schools that were already able to go with every student every day still have the ability to do that. And this is not mandating that those schools which already had that capability have to go to online learning.
Right, and I just want to be clear that that would be the 3 small schools that would be able to continue with that.
Okay.
Conversely,
I couldn't hear Dr. Robinson. Can you repeat what you said, please?
Certainly, my apologies. I just wanted to be, for clarification, that it would be the 3 small rural schools that would be able to continue as planned.
Okay, thank you.
Candace, could you hear that?
Yes, thank you.
Were you able to hear that? Okay.
And
Go
just
ahead.
conversely, if a school were to go completely distance learning and wish to desire that, say they're in a community that it is to their benefit to stay beyond that 9 weeks, we could still let them do that because it's more restrictive. Is that correct?
We are working with the community to do that now. And so, you know, in that regard, there is flexibility in being able to meet the unique needs of a community, as long as we go in the direction of being more restrictive. We cannot be less restrictive if they do not meet the requirements and the mandates.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All right. Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. And I just want to clarify, the reason I'm voting no is because I think 9 weeks is too long before we reevaluate.
Quarter rather than 9 weeks, so it might be shorter.
All right, thank you. The chair votes aye, and that makes it a 4-2 vote, so the motion carries. Any other discussion from the board?
I just want to thank all the administrators and teachers for coming and all the hard work that you're doing. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional. I didn't mean for that to happen. I know this has been really hard for you guys, and I appreciate it on behalf of every student in the district, but particularly on behalf of my own 2 kids. Because without you guys, I mean, what do we have? We have nothing. So I just wanted to let you guys know I really appreciate this. All these faces, they mean so much to me.
Any other questions or comments from the board? You know, I said this last meeting and I will continue to say it. Our ultimate goal is to have every teacher and every student back in the classroom, face-to-face, full-time, as soon as that is possible. You know, making this change tonight to go to the distance learning model, I think we're giving our teachers and our administration the opportunity to really focus on learning without disruptions in their classroom time. And we know that ultimate goal is to be back face-to-face. That's what we want, and that's what we're always pushing forward to get to as soon as possible. So if there are no other questions from the board, we will move on to our final opportunity for public comment.
Teresa, we got a comment from the overflow room.
Hi, I'm
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I'm Ray Lynn Arrieta, and I'm just asking, since we decided, and thank you guys so much for deciding on something, because we as teachers have been going nuts. And I'm a mother as well, and I have 3 kids within our district right now, and I was just going nuts, like, how am I gonna do this all? And I consider myself a very good teacher. And so thank you. Thank you for voting on something. But with that, why do we have to start later then? Is there a way that we can keep our start date the same then? Why do we have to move back to September 8th? Why can't we keep the 31st then? That's my question.
Right, and I will go ahead and answer that because I know administrators, teachers, you know, a lot of people have asked for that professional development time. And the professional development, as you've seen, is already available. And teachers want to have time to get things lined out on their own time to be able to apply the things they're learning in their professional development and get lessons ready, be ready for their students. And I think that's a great advantage to the teachers and the administrators to be able to have that time.
And I
Dr.
do
Robinson,
understand
any
that,
thoughts on that?
because we have start tomorrow, we do have our professional development as well. And we will be learning all of that as well. I don't know. And here I am a teacher as well. I want to be with my students. And I think with just keep pushing it back, I'm worried for them. I'm worried for my children as well. And I do think, and I'm not speaking for everybody, of course, but I just feel like we're lagging in a lot of ways, and as parents as well. Like, our kids need to be educated, and I think with the time that you allotted, we were going to have to do this anyway, except you wanted us to do more. You wanted me to do in-person instruction and online, which would have been way more with less time. And now I can fully focus on one curriculum, which will be benefit my students. I just don't see why we have to wait longer as well.
Thank you, Ms. DiArietta, for your comments, and we, obviously, everyone will take that into account, but thank you. We had another comment in here, please.
I'm Jennifer Tort, and I just wanted to say thank you for, as a teacher, for making a decision and for making what a lot of us believe is the right decision for right now. Especially, I teach kindergarten, and I'm just thinking, I was having nightmares about the first days of school and my kids coming in, and they already cry because they're separating from mommy, and they can't see me smile at them. They can't see me hug them because I got a mask on, so I'm a threat to them. I'm just a stranger, and so it helps to alleviate some of those fears. And so I really appreciate that you guys heard the voices of the teachers and administrators and the parents and just made a decision for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please, Mr. Anderson.
One more thing. Additionally, thank you. And then I just want to share a vote of confidence in all of our teachers. I know adding some more days may seem odd to some people, but I know my teachers, and I know if we're given the training, the wonderful training they're going to get from NNRPDP, and we give them some more days, it's going to be incredible how quickly they bang out 7 amazing weeks of instruction if we just give them that time frame so they know what they're dealing with, knowing what they're doing. They're going to come up with some amazing best thing they can do under the current model, and it's just it's a good choice. So thank you on both of those fronts.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Yes, please.
I personally like to say thank you, Mr. Zeiser, for looking into the litigation for us and taking that into consideration, because that's a thing for my 5th grade pod up there for sure. That's a huge concern for us. If we're opening ourselves to being frivolously sued for something we honestly cannot control. I mean, I really appreciate you guys thinking about that, putting that together to make that vote. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Yes, again, I just want to echo the sentiments of thank you so much. I think the one thing that I really heard tonight with you guys listening to us is, what are we really trying to achieve here? We're trying to achieve the best possible education scenario for our students given the situation that we're in. This is not a forever situation. This is not the new normal. This is an adjustment to a very disruptive situation. And hopefully we will return back with some improvements into how we do school. But I really loved the sentiment that I heard of the board tonight about, let us get the most impactful, effective type of teaching and learning for our students in the safest type of environment that we can, that's conducive for everyone. And I thank you for listening to us and hearing us.
Thank you. All right, any other comments? I just have a quick comment right at the end here saying thank you, board, for making a decision and taking a realistic approach to a situation we're living in. Thank you for giving our kids and staff some sort of certainty, and that is from Laura Pope. And then there's a question about IEPs, and I will say again, please direct your questions about IEPs to Mr. Smith at the district office. He would love to answer every question you have. We promise the kids with IEPs are not being forgotten. Correct, Mr. Smith?
That is correct.
He is saying correct for anyone who couldn't hear him. All right.
Can I make a comment about comments?
Yes.
Or do we have board? I can't remember on the agenda.
Nope, that's it. We're almost
I'll
done.
make a comment about comments then. Just so you know too, the faces that are here tonight are the ones that I'd like to see at these board meetings, because you have a lot of useful information that the general public doesn't understand, the number of variables that you have to deal with on a daily basis. So thank you for being here tonight. And the other thing is, if one more person sends me comments about viruses, I used to teach that stuff. I don't want to hear it anymore. We can have a discussion. Just call me up and I'll talk cytokines and viruses and the immune system with you. I'm sure Mrs. Birdsell would do the same.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Thank you. There are no more comments. We will move on to adjournment of the meeting.
I move to adjourn.
Motion. Thank you, Mr. Cooney.
We want to stay.
All right, do we have a second?
Don't need one.
I don't need a second, I know. But all in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and we are adjourned. Thank you again for those attending here and online, and we look forward to seeing you over and over again at our board meeting. Have a wonderful night.
Nice.
You guys did great. Oh, yeah. I'm
Read.
very excited
You
about
can
it.
read
And it
now.
works
Good.
for both. Yeah, and that's what's beautiful. And
Job,
I was gonna
everybody.
say
Good
that,
job.
but.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you.
Thank you, I do appreciate it.
It means it read to them and I can record it. So, whatever you want to like, so, that's what-